The Brown Hand. A retelling by A Hill, based on the story by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It was a bleak and misty evening when Dr. Hardacre's carriage wound its way through the narrow, twisting lanes of rural Berkshire. The world was sinking into twilight. Fields lay hushed under a silver fog, and the trees stood like ghostly sentinels along the road. In the distance, a light flickered faintly, the lonely glow of the Holden estate. Hardacre leaned back against the seat and reread the letter that had brought him there. It was written in the familiar, precise hand of Sir Dominic Holden, his old mentor from medical school, a surgeon once famed across the empire. The letter had been brief, almost desperate. My dear Hardacre, I beg you to visit me. There is something of great importance, something only a man of reason can understand. Come soon. My health and my peace depend upon it. D. Holden. Hardacre had not seen Holden in nearly a decade. Once the man had been a figure of brilliance, commanding lecture halls, pioneering surgical techniques, decorated for his service in India. Yet after his return to England, rumors spread that Holden had retired abruptly and grown reclusive. No one knew why. As the carriage stopped before the iron gates, Hardacre saw the house, a vast ivy-clad mansion crouched in the mist, its windows glowing like weary eyes. A servant, dark-skinned and silent, opened the door and led him through dim corridors scented faintly of sandalwood. Sir Dominic awaited him in the study. Time had not been kind. His once steadfast hands trembled slightly. His face was pale and drawn, his hair turned to silver. Yet his eyes still carried that same piercing intelligence, shadowed now by something like guilt. "My dear Hardacre," he exclaimed, gripping his hand with a warmth that felt almost desperate. "You've come, thank God." They sat beside the fire, and Holden poured brandy into 2 glasses. The flames threw restless shapes upon the walls, and for a moment neither man spoke. Then Holden said softly, "You are a man of science. Not easily frightened, I trust?" Hardacre smiled faintly. "I've seen enough in surgery to dull most fears." Holden nodded. "Good. Then perhaps you will understand what I must tell you. Others would call it madness, but I assure you, it is all too real." He paused, staring into the fire. "Years ago, during my time in India, I performed an operation on a native man. His name was Azim, a loyal orderly who had served under me for years. He came to me with a deep wound in his arm. A simple case, or so I believed. But infection had set in, and I misjudged it. I amputated his hand to save his life. A week later, he died. Not from the wound, but from despair." Holden's voice faltered. Before he died, he begged that his hand be buried with him, so his body might be whole in the afterlife. I promised it would be done, but when the time came, I disobeyed. The hand was preserved in spirits, a specimen for study. I told myself it was for science, but truthfully, it was pride. Pride and curiosity. He rose suddenly and crossed to a cabinet. From it, he drew a glass jar filled with a pale, cloudy liquid. Within floated a dark, shriveled object, unmistakably a human hand. Hardacre felt an involuntary shudder. "Since that day," Holden continued, "my nights have been cursed. I see him, Hardacre, every night. He comes silently, standing at the foot of my bed, his eyes fixed on me, his arm outstretched. But it ends here." He raised his own wrist. "He wants what is his." Hardacre frowned. Surely this is guilt, not haunting. Dreams born from remorse. Holden shook his head violently. "Dreams do not leave footprints, my friend. Dreams do not move objects. The hand, this very specimen, is never where I leave it. Sometimes on my desk, sometimes beside my pillow. I have tried to bury it, but every time it returns." Silence fell. The fire crackled softly, and somewhere in the distance, a clock struck 10. That night, Hardacre was given a guest room in the East Wing. He told himself it was all nonsense, the fancy of an overwrought mind. But as he drifted to sleep, he could not shake the feeling that the house itself was listening. At midnight, a faint sound stirred him awake, a slow, dragging rhythm like cloth brushing against stone. He sat up, heart quickened, listening. The door creaked open by a fraction, though no wind stirred the curtains. In the dimness, a shadow moved across the floor. Slow, deliberate, almost human. A shape stood in the doorway, faintly luminous, its face featureless yet filled with terrible purpose. One arm reached forward, the other ended in a clean stump. Hardacre froze. For a moment the figure hovered, then turned and seemed to drift down the hall, toward Holden's room. The next morning, the house was unnaturally still. The Indian servant stood in the corridor, his expression solemn but peaceful. When Hardacre entered Holden's study, he found his mentor seated in his chair by the fire, looking more at peace than Hardacre had ever seen him. "The hand," Holden said quietly, "is gone." The glass jar stood empty on the table. A faint trace of sandalwood hung in the air. Holden's eyes met Hardacre's, calm and steady. "He came last night. I saw him once more. But there was no anger this time. Only gratitude. I gave him what was his. It is finished." He leaned back, closed his eyes, and whispered, "At last I can rest." In the days that followed, Hardacre stayed on, helping Mrs. Holden manage affairs. No more disturbances came. The house grew brighter, lighter, as though freed from a long oppression. When Hardacre finally left, he turned once at the gate. The mist had lifted, and sunlight streamed through the clouds. Somewhere, faintly, the scent of sandalwood drifted on the breeze. He could not explain what he had seen that night. Perhaps it was imagination, perhaps something beyond reason. But he knew one thing with certainty, that in that lonely country house, a great wrong had been quietly set right. And as his carriage rolled away down the winding road, Dr. Hardacre found himself whispering a silent farewell, not to his old friend, but to a restless spirit that had at last found peace.